Hello, my name is Steve Scherer, and I'm an NMD living in St. Charles, Missouri with my wife, Mary Scherer, who is also an NMD. I'm a father of 3 boys and a grandfather to 2. I've been a commercial insurance agent since 1986, and I feel privileged to speak with you today, and I hope it can make this worth your while. Dawn asked me to talk to you briefly about the Juice Plus business from a man's perspective, and to perhaps highlight a couple of differences between the corporate world and the Juice Plus business. But before I jump into that, I thought it would be fun to try and highlight a man's perspective by taking a look at 4 words that men want to hear from women versus 4 words that women want to hear from men. Now, I got these examples from wallstreetinsanity.com, and these are the top picks. So here we go. This is what men or women want to hear from men. Number 1, I loaded the dishwasher. Number 2, you're right, I'm wrong. Number 3, I got extra guac. And number 4, let's watch some Lifetime. Now, these are the 4 words that men want to hear from women. Number 1, I just won the lotto. Number 2, here's the beer. Number 3, babe, you are right. And number 4, every man's personal favorite, let's get it on. Now, with all that said, I want to speak to you on a serious note about what I find so appealing about the Juice Plus business. I think it's important to have a why. Just making money isn't enough. There needs to be passion built around your mission as a Juice Plus partner, whether it's changing the health of your family, our future generations, or helping the financial outlook for a lot of cash-strapped families to get out of the daily grind. You got to have a why. Now, the latter one happens to be my passion, and this is my story. I call it the tale of the reluctant spouse. I know it sounds like Edgar Allan Poe, but bear with me. It's a story of what this business can mean for a family, any family. And I like to think that Mary and I are the poster children for this, what this business can change, how it can change your life. So here we go. Let me take you back to 1995. I was in my 10th year as a commercial insurance agent working for a major insurance company. I was number 10 out of 528 reps nationally. And we had we were hitting on all cylinders. We had our forever house, our kids were in private school, we had the whole shebang. But as I often tell my children, it's a short trip from the penthouse to the outhouse, so be careful. And in a span of 2 short years, everything for us went south. The company I worked for decided to go in a different direction, and 50% of my income evaporated over the span of a year. Mary was working full-time or part-time in the OR trying to make up the difference, but we fell short every month. We just couldn't catch up. And as a result of that, we wound up selling our forever home, pulling our kids out of private school. And I remember how heartbreaking it was to watch my kids say goodbye to their school friends. I took a new job with another insurance company, hoping to make it up the difference, but initially took a substantial pay cut. The result of all that was that my ex-employer decided to sue me over my non-compete to the tune of $750,000. That was a day that I will never forget. And in the midst of all this financial meltdown, we had our 3rd child, William. Now, shortly after Willie was born, Mary got the diagnosis that every woman fears, ovarian cancer. So what else could possibly go wrong? Oh yeah, I lost both my parents within the span of 60 days. Things were bleak, but fortunately, Mary's tumors turned out to be benign. Thank the Lord. However, the doc said they got to come out, so she went ahead with the surgery, and the effects for her were devastating. She had to quit her job in the OR because she couldn't think fast enough any longer to work with the doctors. So she eventually took a job as a wellness coordinator at a chiropractic clinic. The owner, Dr. Carl McCarowitz, eventually became her sponsor, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so hang on. Things bumped along for us. Year after year, we were living paycheck to paycheck and robbing Peter to pay Paul. Every month, we were dead broke and deeply in debt. And then a serendipitous event occurred. A hairdresser came into the clinic one day with a product called Juice Plus. Now, at this time, we were spending $200 to $300 a month on vitamins, and Mary's condition was not getting any better. I recall Mary telling me that she was not interested in promoting another product. However, the hairdresser persisted, and Doc finally let her show the movie with a doctor in it called The Whole Truth in 15 Minutes. And that video changed our lives forever. It struck Mary like a bolt out of the blue. She got it immediately. the concept of whole food nutrition. So she signed up our whole family, and she wanted to become a representative, but sadly, at that time, we didn't have the extra $50 for her to sign the application. Things were that tough. But eventually, after a few days, she scraped together the $50, signed the application, and then the hairdresser said, oh, by the way, there's a conference in San Diego 28 days from now. How'd you like to go? Well, obviously she wanted to go, but if we couldn't afford an application fee, how are we going to afford an airplane ticket to San Diego? So in another serendipitous event, it just so happened that Dr. Mkarowitz had an airplane ticket to attend a vitamin conference he decided not to go to. He was able to give that ticket to Mary. She reconfigured it so she could use it and flew to San Diego for the Juice Plus conference. And when she came back, she scheduled her first in-home event, invited 50 people, followed up by phone with no one, and you know what happened? Not a single person showed up. She rescheduled, sent 39 invitations out, followed up by phone. 13 people showed up that night. 9 bought, 3 became team members, and Mary was on her way. So you might be asking me at this point, well, what's your involvement in this story, if any? And that's where I come in as the reluctant spouse. Although I'm now Mary's biggest cheerleader, I have to tell you, at that time, I was the most skeptical and disinterested spouse around. I was so sure that this was a get-rich-quick scheme and would flame out after a few weeks. And in a moment of supreme arrogance, I actually told Mary that she should get a real job. Yeah, it was not my proudest moment. However, for those of you that know Mary, it was get on board or get out of the way. And so I shut up, although I was still skeptical. I did notice after a few months that her paychecks started to increase, slowly at first, but after a while, I think around the 6-month mark, she actually had a comma in her check. And I started to think to myself, could this be real? Well, after 2 years of holding my tongue, Mary finally invited me to a Juice Plus conference in Memphis, Tennessee. At this point, I thought this was my aha moment. I'm going to be able to prove to her that the people are snake oil salesmen. So I went down there, and I have to tell you what I saw absolutely blew me away. The company people, their professional attitude and general deportment was just impressive. And I remember thinking on the way home from that conference, I had met people like this when I first got involved in the insurance business, people with exceptional business acumen and humility. And at that point, it was like an epiphany for me. I knew that I had to get on board, but I had to do one more thing that was extremely hard for me, and that's admit to Mary that she was right and I was wrong. So what am I going to do now? I realized in looking at this that she was busy most evenings, and the best way I could help her was to take on the lion's share of the domestic activities. So I got to be pretty good with the skillet, the washer and dryer. I ran kids to sports, to school. It didn't matter. I did whatever needed to be done to free up time for her to build her business. And she did not disappoint us. Sure, I brought in my share of customers, but make no mistake, she built this, not me. So now I'm her biggest cheerleader. And I remember an old desktop computer we had in our kitchen that the kids would use. And I put on the screensaver, I created a crawler that said Mary Scherer NMD. And she watched that every year for 2 years. And finally, in 2005, she crossed the stage as a national marketing director. So let's fast forward now to 2021. Well, I'm pleased to tell you that we're back in the penthouse, so to speak, and truly living the dream. We've been able to say yes to so many things for our children that otherwise would not have been possible without our Juice Plus income. I'm going to name just a few for you. We sent all 3 of our boys to private Catholic high school for 4 years. All 3 of our boys played elite travel hockey all over the United States and Canada, including a 10-day trip to Quebec City for the World Championship of Pee Wee hockey. We had ski trips and beach trips every year for our family, all over the United States. And we finally got to say yes to an Ivy League education for my youngest son, and also include a trip to the United Kingdom to watch him play in the first NCAA tournament held out of the country. You know, people say money isn't important, but as Zig Ziglar says, it's right up there with oxygen. Well, money allowed us to gift, although money allowed us to gift those things to our sons, but it also gave us the ability to design our lives. A famous person once said, time equals money, and that is so true. In addition to being able to earn an unrestricted income, time freedom is one of the great benefits of the Juice Plus business. In the corporate world, you're a slave to your desk. Your income is pretty much limited to what they're willing to pay you. And if you're lucky, you don't have to clock in and out. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with any of that, but if you want a life that you've dreamed about, you've got to create a new paradigm. I could go on and on about this, but you get my drift. I tell you all this because our story could be your story. I've observed a lot of people in the Juice Plus business over the years, and I can tell you with a great degree of confidence that there are only two things that are absolutely non-negotiable if you want to create a life for yourself, and whatever that life looks like. Number one, you've got to be willing to do the things that other people won't do. You have to commit 100%. And number two, equally as important, don't ever get out of line. Don't quit. No matter what, stay the course. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. It's a true story to illustrate this last point. It was the closing days of World War II, and my father was, his unit was attached to General Patton's Third Army in Europe. And after a particular engagement where they had done something wonderful, General Patton decided to review my dad's company. This was considered quite an honor. And so there they were, all the soldiers were standing in rows at attention, and General Patton, with his polished helmet and his riding crop, was walking up and down the ranks. And he stopped at a young 18-year-old private in front of my father, and he tapped him on the chest with his riding crop. He said, "Son, how'd you get that silver star?" And the poor kid was so flustered, he didn't know what to say. And all he could say was, "Well, General, I was so scared, I stood there when the others ran. I stood there when the others ran." So don't you get out of line. You stay the course, don't quit, and you'll get your silver star. Thank you.